Florida.
I can say that because I just turned 31 and I've effectively skipped my first divorce. So
I was gonna say you are a baby, and so and I'm allowed to say ex because I was married, but
I'm starting to get aches and pains in places I never thought I had before. So I'm not so sure about that baby comment, but in any event.
No, because your 30s are awesome. 30s are great. I mean, 40s they've gotten better, but when I first started my 40s, I was like, fuck this. This is not what was promised to me. This is the opposite of what was promised, right? Like I felt old and decrepit and tired all the time. And I was like, and I have fat in places I didn't know there was supposed to be fat. And oh Lord.
Not a chance. Not a chance in heaven or hell that would be. Well, Erin, I have to be honest. I mean, I can understand that you're in your 40s, but you don't look a day over 20.
Thank you. That's very, very sweet. I'm very lucky in that I take care of myself as much as I can, as much as someone who eats bacon can say that she takes care of herself. Because let's be honest, right? But I drink lots of water. I stay out of the sun. I wear sunscreen. I don't mess around with this.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you heard that prelude, that kicks off APX for the latest edition. And I'd like to start with a little premise like with what I did with Rob Kelly. If you ever heard the nursery rhyme, which I'm sure everyone knows about, it goes to the effect of Jack and Jill went up the hill. Now take a mentally defective person and the rhyme would go to the tune of Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. I don't know what the hell they did up there because now they've got a daughter.
Oh!
The onus...
That's fabulous. It's like a dirty limerick. It's like there once was a man from Nantucket. Yeah.
Don't start with me. Well, I started something. But in effect, what I'm trying to get at here, folks, whether you're watching or listening, we've spoken about mental health and mood disorders. If you haven't heard it when I said it on the previous show, I'll say it again for perpetuity. It's not a death sentence. And thus, I allude today to Erin Dawn. Erin Dawn has had so much of fun in her life with the ups and the downs. But what impresses me most about this girl, she can sing even better than any other female operetta singer, even better than Maria Callas. But her knowledge is so encyclopedic, she can tell you that Roger Corman's favorite movie that got him into filmmaking was Sergei Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin, to even what Sybil Danning had on the morning when they were busy filming The Howling 2. And that's why I brought Erin on. She's resilient, she's humble, and a treasure trove of fun. She's also the host of the ever-popular Manic Movie Monday Podcast, in which they discuss B-movies, cult movies, and even has a lot of cult stars on. So without further ado, Erin, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as always, my friend. Good to have you back.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I love your show. I never miss it. I love being here. You're my favorite interviewer, you know? And
that's what schmoozing will get you. Pro tip.
See? That's the thing. But no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, especially just coming from somebody who, battles with, dances with, whatever you want to call it, mental illness. It is not a death sentence. And I strive every day to try and remove some of the stigma of living with this and of trying to cultivate a lifestyle where I'm both mentally well, but also happy and healthy and okay in my skin. So.
Well, very much so. I mean, you and I were talking before we started the show. You are what would be classified as middle-aged, but you've never acted your age.
Oh my God, I guess I am, right? If I live to be like 88 or something like this. So technically I am middle-aged. All right, yeah. So yes, I am classified as middle-aged. Thank you for that. 43 actually. But,
no, 20 years old with 23 years experience. Let's not get started on that little hiccup. You're only
like
old
that.
when the candles cost more than the cake.
There you go.
In fact, with me having turned 31 last week, my last birthday cake looked like a fucking prairie fire.
Happy belated birthday, by the way, Chris.
Thank you, darling. Now, to be serious, you've been very transparent since the moment that I've met you that you've been diagnosed with bipolar mood disorder. I tend to forget which classification it is, but what has amazed me about you is where you've taken your weakness and turned it into an incalpable strength. How does that mindset work?
Well, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, which is an emphasis on the depression side of bipolar, along with a hypomanic state. So not as intense as people who have bipolar 1 and experience mania. It is more of like a elevated mood, elevated energy level, but it can also be elevated anxiety, talking too fast, your brain's running too fast. There's a lot involved in it. So it and I got diagnosed when I had 5 years sober.
I see.
Because usually before then they tend to, when you get into recovery, not want to diagnose someone right away because they don't know if they're showing signs of psychosis, which are related to the drugs that they did or the alcohol addiction. So they usually hold off on that. And I had operated under the idea that I had depression for my entire life, basically, probably since I was a teenager, I would say. And so I had been on one type of antidepressant or another for decades. And finally, one day, I was just beside myself. Like I was just crying and rocking back and forth. And my mother basically said, do you need to go to the hospital? And this was shortly before I celebrated 5 years. So it was like that couple months before that. And
I can appreciate that.
Yeah. And I said, yeah. And then I went to the hospital and they said, do you think you want to kill yourself? And I said, yes. And they said, do you have a plan? And I said, yes. And they committed me, as they say. We have a word here in Florida, in the States, referred to as Baker acting, which is basically like you are not allowed to go home because you were a danger to yourself. So because of the Baker Act, you have to stay here for 72 hours at least.
Okay.
So I did. I stayed for 72 hours. And while I was there, they were like, they asked me lots of questions and they said, so you're bipolar 2. And I was just mortified because I knew that there was a stigma attached to being bipolar.
Naturally. You
watch any movie that was made probably, I would say, prior to maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I would say. And it's such a, crazy girl, like just all of it, and I've seen
very overblown.
Any movie I've ever seen that had bipolar disorder in it was just like, so I knew two things. I knew that there was going to be a stigma attached to it and that word bipolar, and that I was going to be on medication that was going to make me a zombie. And that was something that I did not want. Now, mind you, I didn't really know that we've come very far pharmacologically, thank God.
Oh, yes.
So there are lots and lots of different types of medication and medication combos. So,
but also a stringent routine that one can follow.
Yes, but I didn't learn that from a doctor. It when I got diagnosed, it was, here's your pills. This is what you're going to do. There wasn't any lifestyle stuff at all. I got a therapist that was not an MD and was more holistic. And he, also in recovery, taught me, that this is not about it's not just about taking your meds. This is very much about your sleep schedule, what you eat, who you interact with, what you watch on television. A
lot of external stimuli.
Very much so. It's almost like, imagine if your brain is just like a test tube, right? And if you put the wrong things in it, wrong things happen. And like one of the things that he taught me was, make sure your blood sugar is regulated. Make sure you're eating. Don't go on crazy diets, right? Don't go on any diet that's going to compromise your blood sugar, that's going to, quote, starve you. It's not good for us, because one of the things that will facilitate a manic episode is low blood sugar. So.
I've never known that, but thank you for highlighting it. You're very right. We've come very far in diagnosis, and also, if I could use this expression for shorthand, proper treatment of mood disorders. I'll be open and honest. I've recently discovered I've got dysthymia, which is not bipolar by any given sense of the word. It's recurring, in-depth, intense bouts of depression.
Yes.
Right? But much like with BP2, you can control it or properly regulate it through intake, what you eat, physical activity. Now, for me, you and I are similar in that we're both right-brain aligned. We are very much in tune with the creative side of the brain. So for me, it would be more of a fact of stimulating this consistently, which promotes, not dopamine, there's another word.
Serotonin?
Serotonin, which promotes serotonin. Thank you for that, by the way. The word was on the tip of my tongue. Where the moment that you promote serotonin instead of dopamine, that feeling of to accelerate just completely shifts the mood from originally here to here. And I would be the first one to say there's power in that, knowing that what you have, now you know at least the building blocks to go forward from here on out, to move forward. I believe it makes a person more mature. I think in many ways as well, even though there are challenges involved, you can overcome that hoop. And I congratulate you for the years and the time being that you've spent being vocal about the condition that you have. And I mean, this has now been how many years going down the line? And look at you today. You're a sparkling ray of sunshine, but it didn't come easy. I'm betting.
No. It's a lot of times you're kind of the doctor's guinea pig when it comes to meds. So MDs will basically be like, okay, we're going to try on this combo. Okay, we're going to try on this combo. And really what it comes down to is it's what combo you can live with. It's like, can you live with being fat and sexless? Okay, so this is the combo for you. Can you live with being completely like foggy brained all the time and not really, on top of things? It's like, okay, so this is the combo for you. Like you really have to learn what works for you. And sometimes something will start off being very promising and then end up being very detrimental. So it's a lot of
constant adapting.
Yes, it's constant adapting. And it's also understanding that your lifestyle can pull the rug right out from your drugs, basically. Like the effects of your medication are affected by what you do. So what you eat, water, exercise, sunlight, vitamins, or the opposite of that, right? So like if you do nothing but like eat baked goods and and drink like caffeine after 12, I mean, if you do these things, then unfortunately it's going to affect your meds. It's going to affect the effectiveness of your meds. And if you don't sleep, that's going to affect your meds. And it's just like, it's all like they all work in conjunction with each other. But until you learn that, you're at the mercy of your meds. You're like, why are my meds not working? I don't understand. I'm on antidepressants. Why am I so sad? Why is this happening? And it's like, it's so much more than that. There's like two things, right? It's like holistic, medical.
Let's talk about the more positive upside. And that's something that you are very, very well versed in. In fact, you shocked me when you held court with me when we started talking about the subject. You are the host of the Manic Movie Monday Podcast. I heard that promo, by the way. I love it to pieces. But you are basically self-taught in the art of podcasting today, or help me out there.
No, I am. So the funny thing was, Manic Movie Monday came to be because I was having a manic episode. It was like a year ago. I wasn't, usually a hypomanic episode, or a manic episode as it's referred to, is caused by an upheaval of some sort. Now, that could be a good upheaval or a bad upheaval. It could be a new job, a new relationship, a new schedule, right? Or it can be a bad upheaval, a death, the anniversary of a death, a birthday, a relationship ending. And at the time I was fired, or I should say I was let go for the summer by the job that I work at, because they just didn't have enough during the pandemic. They didn't have enough people. They just were like, too many people, not enough work, basically. So my friend Ron got let go first. And we initially connected because he was trying to figure out the name of this bikini movie that one of his favorite punk bands was featured in. And I, always wanting to be, the knower of things that other people can't find, was like, oh, it's hard. Yeah, absolutely. I was like, oh, it's Hard Bodies. And he's like, really? And I said, absolutely, it's Hard Bodies. Just go buy it. So he sees it and he's like, yeah, that's the song. He's like, but I don't remember this movie. And I remember this movie being totally different, And so we connected on just a love of kind of underappreciated films, I should say. It wasn't necessarily B movies. It was more like horror, cult cinema, and things like that. So of course, while I'm, woohoo, I just like, we should do a podcast, knowing nothing about podcasting
Was this before or after you did my previous show? I have to ask.
Oh, this was... Well, because there's one that didn't take, right? So
don't remind me.
No. I know, but I'm trying to remember because I've been on your show. I was on Have a Cuppa like twice. So after.
Okay.
So I had this like, harebrained schemed idea or whatever. And then it just, like most bipolar ideas, just went into a drawer somewhere. And I ended up losing my job shortly after he lost his. And he got in touch with me and said, hey, maybe now's the time we start that podcast. And I was in a deep depression. I was very dark and I was very sad. And I thought, how am I going to feed myself for the summer? And I had to apply for food stamps, apply for, all the stuff. Right. So
the whole kit and caboodle. So we decided, we're like, okay, let's do this. I said, I will come up with an idea and, you edit it. Right. Cause I didn't know anything about anything. And we did a Jaws 3
episode where we just sat and talked about our love of Jaws 3, meaning like, two of the only people on the world that will die on that hill. And it ended up being that we had great chemistry. And it was just a really great thing. But he was doing all of the editing, all of the music, and I went and found our theme song, which came to be because I grew up with an artist. Well, I didn't grow up with him because he's super old, but I grew up listening to a very specific, like what's referred to as a novelty artist, called Tom Lehrer. And Tom Lehrer had a couple really wild songs, one of which was Poisoning Pigeons in the Park. It was just fantastic because it's done in this like very like waltzy, like, like it's going to be a great day when we're poisoning pigeons in the park, but he had another one called the Masochism Tango. And I was like, yes. So I looked it up.
Where do people come up with these titles?
I know. And the thing is, this is from the 50s. So this is not like, modern or anything. And I looked up Tom Lehrer, and it turns out that in Tom's old age, he decided to make everything that he had ever recorded public domain. So it was like God just gave me that, yeah, absolutely. He was like, here you go on a silver platter. Here's your theme song. You don't have to worry about licensing fees or anything. It's yours. So that became the theme song. And then a couple, we kind of recorded a couple shows and we're trying to find our footing. And then Ron had to deal with some stuff personally. So I had to step up and learn how to edit, how to change the sound quality, how to do any of that kind of stuff. And it was...
You came to me asking for advice a couple of times. I remember that.
I did. Because I was really scared. I was just terrified because I was like, oh my God, because people have lives, and things happen. And he was trying to find a job. And so... But he saved my life because he's the one who pulled me out of that depression and got me into doing the show. And it was just so amazing. We became, he's my best guy friend, so we really solidified that. But yeah, he kind of had to take a back seat. And when he did that, I had to learn how to edit, how to get software and all the stuff. Right. And it was, the first couple of times. Thank you. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it because the first couple times that I would watch an edit how-to on YouTube, I would cry.
Well, I can understand that, Erin. And I mean, you are number 25 on my list of people who have come to me and said, how does this content look on this end? How does it sound on that end? And I appreciate it. It doesn't irritate me because the reason being is the artist is never satisfied. I see it from that prism. Look, how do you bake a cake? First, you have to use flour. Then you have to add the cocoa and. But if you're going to do something for the very first time, and I'm saying this to you as well, who's a content creator, don't expect perfection on the first try. It's not going to work. Reason being is practice. What happens when you get on a bicycle? You're going to fall off. That's why, of course, you have training wheels at the beginning, and then eventually you learn how to fly without a safety net. That's ultimately how it works. But you can't expect as well, again, addressing the audience, that your content right off the bat is going to buy into the mass audience. Why? Because there's a huge galaxy out there. And I'll ask Erin's opinion and perceptions with regards to content dissemination and content variety and the like. But with the galaxy of content that's out there currently at the moment, you have to find, the audience member, have to find a brand, a niche, a name that sticks to you, a host like Erin or someone like me or some of our mutual friends out there who have podcasts and content of their own, which buys to you. What we as hosts can do is purely just create content in the hope that someone will listen. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to build your own audience, but it takes time at the end of the day. Now, with Manic Movie Monday Podcast, which I enjoy thoroughly, I recently did an episode a while ago. What I love about the podcast is it's not a review podcast. It's really a discussion podcast like Doug Benson Goes to the Movies, or for that fact, even a combination of Doug Benson Goes to the Movies with Leonard Maltin on movies. There's a lot of in-depth discussion by specialists. You've had a couple of actresses and actors on from the certain productions. But before we get to that, I always wanted to ask you, how is it that you built such an encyclopedic knowledge of cult films and the like?
I think it really came from being alone a lot as a kid. I really do, because I wasn't really like a friend person. Like, I didn't really have friends till way later. And I was also, like, in junior high, I was horribly bullied, like just really badly bullied. So
I can relate.
A lot of that stuff came from, escapism, and so I discovered things like USA Up All Night and Joe Bob Briggs.
Were you a fan of Caroline Schlitz's version of USA Up All Night, or of Rhonda Shear?
Rhonda Shear became my person, afterwards, so she kind of, introduced me to all of these other types of films that I would have normally seen, and they were okay for me to watch because they were cut.
Sure.
So as a kid, I'm like watching these movies, and no, they're not appropriate for any child ever. But
so what?
I would watch them, and then I had, I just had a very weird memory for being able to memorize dialogue and actors and actresses, and then I would go on like these little deep dives in the cable guide. I had like a little TV guide, and
which was the Bible for any nerd.
Oh yeah, my favorite thing to do was like when the new cable guide would arrive, and I would be like, oh my god, and I'd open up the back of it and I'd look at all the movies that were coming on, and I'd circle the ones I wanted to see, and I'd plan it. That's how it was done, right?
Before Netflix, I should add, ladies and gentlemen.
Way before Netflix. So I think it kind of came from just being alone a lot, and and then it just kind of developed into this thing that I never really thought would go anywhere. I just kind of thought it would be like a fun party trick,
Sure, of course.
Like, I know da 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 da, and so is in such and such, and da da da, but it came in handy with the show, because
and it does.
All of a sudden,
you speak naturally off the cuff like an expert.
There you go.
This girl can never say thank you. I have to add that as well. I'm kidding,
very
darling.
bad about it. Yes, it's fine. Thank you very much for that compliment. I mean, the two things that I look for with my show whenever I'm listening to it is the content entertaining, and is the quality good? Like, naturally, can I hear it, and is it entertaining? Like, that's the main thing. Like, I don't ever really, because I know other podcasters, and they'll get in touch with me and they'll say, oh, don't listen to this episode because, we had some sound issues, or this happened, and I wanted to fix this, but I couldn't. And I never judge a podcast on that. I always judge it on its content. I always judge it on, are these people that I would talk to, right? Or because I think one of the reasons that the podcast blossomed the way it did is that it found an audience and people that wanted to celebrate these films and not demonize them or make fun of them or take the piss out of them, as the Brits would say. It really was about celebrating, and it was kind of like, let's be the Ted Lasso of schlock film podcasts, right?
Oh,
like,
are you as sad as I am that Ted Lasso is finished now?
Don't start! It's so upsetting. I can't.
But what a wonderful story. I really want to show my mother Ted Lasso. I think she would enjoy it. And one of my favorite actresses is in Ted Lasso. I haven't seen her in a while. Juno Temple, who plays the owner of the soccer team. Fantastic. I loved her in Killer Joe with Matthew McConaughey. That's the first time I actually saw her. And, of course, a show that you and I know very well, Dirty John.
Yeah, I loved her in Dirty John, and I loved her in a movie called Afternoon Delight. That's where I've
never
seen her
Afternoon Delight, but really an underrated character actress.
Oh,
and I think
fabulous.
In many ways she puts a lot of these newer generation female actresses, she really makes them, she can piss circles around them, in my humble opinion.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, she's amazing. And so I just kind of wanted something that was joyful. I wanted something that was joyful because I had heard enough podcasts where people just eviscerated film, and I was just kind of over it.
And I think in many ways as well, with Manic Movie Monday Podcast, you've created a niche all your own, because if you look at shows of similar genre, let me just name a couple of names. You mentioned there was USA Up All Night, there was Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, Svengoolie, and another name you mentioned, Joe Bob Briggs.
Oh, Joe Bob Briggs, yep.
Who's now signed up for another season of Joe Bob's Movie Drive-In.
Drive-In at the Joe Bob at the Drive-In, yep.
Joe Bob at the Drive-In, thank you. They have a very satirical edge when it comes to cult cinema, but you, on the other hand, at least in my opinion, even though there's humorous elements in it, it's as if you and your guests actually really, in so many words, share your appreciation and your respect for a given production. Even if it is so horribly downright bad that it's almost unwatchable, still, you guys give off that unique selling point of, hey, give this thing really a chance. Am I right or am I wrong?
Absolutely. And I think that's what happened when I brought Hillary along for the ride. Was she had come along for Basket Case, and it was just supposed to be a one-time gig. It was like, I talked to her and said, hey, come on the show, let's do this. And we had such an amazing chemistry that after Basket Case, I just thought, this is what I want for the show. I want, the back and forth between the two of us is so great. And we come from vastly different backgrounds, and I'm from Florida and she's from Jersey. And, we just, so it's
Southie.
Yeah, so it's fun to be able to talk about our childhoods, and we're only a year or two apart, so just that back and forth. And then we share the recovery element too. So we always talk about
too?
Absolutely. So we both have both have different recovery stories, but the same, the same sort of solid step element, right? Just the foundation. Sorry, the foundation is the same. So I had her on for Reform School Girls, and that was kind of where I decided I just wanted her solid, because we both had the same story. We both had seen it on USA Up All Night, and we both loved the soundtrack, and her birthday had come along, and I was like, I'm buying you the DVD, right? So I bought her the DVD. And it's just fun to listen to us kind of just geek out over this, right? And she just brought an element to the show that hadn't been there, previously. And it was nice to have someone who also shared a genuine love for the material. That she just,
You're also talking to a person who has a love for that stuff. You've heard me expound to absolute exaggeration about William Smith.
Yes. Yes.
Forgive me if he's not one of your top notch, but
yes, William Smith or Arnold Vosloo, or you know what I mean. So,
don't even get me started on
I know.
That
don't get me started on Arnold Vosloo.
No. No, with all due respect, I appreciate Arnold Vosloo if he could just do a proper American accent. I mean,
he can't. He can't. It doesn't matter what movie he does. I don't care if he does an erotic thriller, an episode of 24, or a horror movie. He is 100% incapable of doing an American accent.
And I have to agree with you. I mean, I'm doing voiceover work, and I can do an American accent 3 times as convincing as what he can. I remember this was before The Mummy. He did an episode of Nash Bridges.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. And he played an American villain in that.
That's the one I've seen. You know what? I saw that episode because I went through this weird Don Johnson phase, right? Where I had seen all of the Miami Vice. I had seen all the Miami Vice episodes, and I downloaded all the, dirty Don Johnson films, and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to watch old episodes of Nash Bridges. And that's where it ended.
And as I was about to say, he did not nail the American accent. I could hear the South African lilt in his speech. Now, with respect to Arnold Vosloo, he speaks with the accent that I originally was raised in. But before I went in for a classical education, I thankfully, by the grace on high, shed my Afrikaner accent. I don't speak with an Afrikaner accent whatsoever. Otherwise, you would have heard the letter R far more pronunciated. But no, I have to agree with you. He does not do accents very well. He's always done that Afrikaner accent. And I'm going to say something which is going to make my kinsman turn green, but he's actually making a mockery of the South African people as a whole. And
oh boy.
But people look up to him because he's a South African actor who went over to America, and he's staunchly South African, and God love him for that, I suppose. But if you are assigned a project of high merit, one would think that you would do the necessary criteria well to not look like a parody of yourself. Oof. But I love certain of his things. Of course, The Mummy is one of my favorite films. There was a Jean-Claude Van Damme film that was done in the 90s by the name of Hard Target, starring Lance Henriksen, who I love very, very much. Yes, he is in
Hard Target. And he's also in this really bizarre and kind of sleazy, let's be honest, erotic thriller from the 90s called The Finishing Touch, where he plays... No, it's not. It's not for you. No, it's not for you at all. But it's got like Ted Raimi, Shelley Hack, Arnold Vosloo. Like, it's just, I don't know what I don't know what people were thinking. Maybe somebody owed somebody a favor. I don't know, but it's basically about a guy who is investigating a series of murders that they think are being committed by this visual artist, right? And that's Arnold Vosloo, right? He's supposed to be this like super eccentric, like performance art, but with video, because it was the 90s, right? So, and then, but then it turns out he's actually like just making snuff films, and everyone thinks it's art because they don't know.
What
right?
the F?
I know.
What in the literal F?
And then Shelley Hack plays the cop's ex-wife who falls in love with Arnold Vosloo. But Arnold Vosloo is just very bad.
Well,
like a very bad person.
I did say she's got an encyclopedic knowledge of movies. Right? She even puts me to shame. But speaking of Bill Smith, it was Bill Smith who actually introduced me to B movies. I'm talking of titles like Hell Comes to Frogtown with the late Roddy Piper, God rest his soul, and plus also Maniac Cop. And I must say, I really love those trilogy of films. Sure, he was only in the first one, but if you look at the talent that was in Manic Cop 2 and 3 alone, I mean, Jackie Earle Haley, Robert Davey, Bruce Campbell, Lorene Landon, who was Sheena, I think. There's another name that I'm blanking out on, and I'm going to be shot for it, but I can't think. It was a sure payday for actors who came from television to make the transition to the big screen. And because of the cult cinema circuit, there was a built-in audience, and it showed to potential producers that, hey, maybe these people have got some talent. Let's put them in an A project so they can lure in people to the cinema and we can make our money back.
Lots of people started off on Silk Stockings. I mean,
that was a terrible show.
That show was on for 6 seasons. Okay.
6.
But people started, like, there's lots of cameos, lots of starting off in Silk Stockings, and then they kind of like worked their way up,
There was B television.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Silk Stockings was... Yes, Silk Stockings was definitely, it was like, hey, it's Miami Vice, but make it sexy. And it's like, no,
absolutely.
It's not.
And what about Pacific Blue?
Pacific Blue, right? Biker cops. And by biker cops, we mean on bicycles.
All right, guys, come on in. Ching, 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 ching.
Right. Ching, 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 ching. Slow down. Oh, my
All right,
Lord. And,
in the basket.
but like, okay, so for instance, Pacific Blue stars Darlene Vogel. Darlene Vogel started off in one of the Angel movies. She was in Angel 4, I think. And she was also a huge Fredericks of Hollywood model. Like she was in every single Fredericks of Hollywood catalog. And
she was a very picturesque woman.
Right. Then she does Ski School. Then all of a sudden she's on Pacific Blue for a long time. I love Ski School. I'm a huge Ski School fan. I love Dean Cameron.
One name in Ski School that is now more better known than he was originally before is John Piper Ferguson.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's funny. It's so funny.
To the people who might not know the name, but certainly the face, think Tex Nolan from The Last Ship. Think Captain Cole Stinger Taylor from Battlestar Galactica. Think Bird on a Wire. Or even Pete Hutter from The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., also with Bruce Campbell.
There you go. Yeah, he's had his hands in everything.
He's had his hand in everything. Predominantly a TV actor, but like me, always with the face fuzz, which gave him a very distinctive look. Great Canadian actor and very, very down to earth. And wasn't Ski School as well with Mark Harmon?
No, that is Summer School.
Summer School.
Mm-hmm.
Summer School. Sorry, I got that confused for a moment.
Nope, that is okay.
An interesting comment that I would like to run by you. You mentioned Ted Raimi. Bruce Campbell, in fact, when his autobiography of Chins Could Kill was released, he made a comment that really made me puzzle for a moment. And the more I think about it, I actually start to think that it's actually a lot of sense, that every movie is a quote-unquote B movie. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, like, every movie I would say every movie is a B movie to somebody. I would say that because there are people who absolutely, like, if that's not your flavor, you're going to think of that as B cinema, right? I will be totally honest with you. I've been forced to watch 8 hours of Lord of the Rings, and I never want to go back. I do not want to return to that. That is not my flavor. So now, granted, I would never call it a B movie because it's just not for me, man. Like, I don't, but I do understand what he means by that in the sense that everyone has their opinion. And one of my promos that we just released, one promo that we released says, one person's trash is another person's treasure.
One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Right, exactly. So I think it's subjective. Everyone's gonna look at something and go, like, I love Grease too. A lot of people hate it. It's
a good movie.
I love Jaws 3. A lot of people, they're like, oh no, heaven forbid. So
I like Orca and Leviathan.
Right? Oh, I love Leviathan. Oh yeah, I know.
It's a movie that keeps you on your toes because you don't see the enemy at all.
I'm into that. I love Leviathan. Leviathan's great. Deep Star 6 is great. But there are people who would think Deep Star 6 is a B movie.
And for my South African audience, if I have any, guess who makes a turn in Deep Star 6 with Miguel Ferrer? Marius Veyes.
That's right.
The various Marius Veyes, who also did an episode of The Golden Girls in its final season. Haha, there's a little bit of trivia for you, South Africa.
Fabulous.
But
that's fantastic.
I want another two perceptions from you. In the years of yore, especially in your day, there was the rise of the miniseries, which I really missed, to tell you the God's honest truth.
I know.
It was an hour and a half episode, stretching over 12 episodes max, telling a long story. Nowadays, television series, which was the second golden era of the television show, is now becoming overtly saturated. But with a miniseries, you had the ability to tell a complete story over a given set of episodes. The scripts were better written. There was better character development. More often than not, there was not that overblown special effects. aspect that came into it, with the exception of a gunshot or an explosion here and there.
Right.
And there was just that little extra something in the miniseries. Nowadays, it's not a miniseries anymore. It's a limited series.
Right. It's a limited series.
Tell me your thoughts on that.
Because back in the day, it was like we had Lonesome Dove, we had It, we had the Thornbirds. I fucking loved the miniseries. And that was part of, like when we would come and spend the night for the summer, and we'd stay summers out at the beach, and there was always some miniseries on, right? And it was like Lincoln, or Mary Todd or whatever. It was like you put it on one night and then you'd be like, oh, we got to see what's going to happen tomorrow night. Right. It wasn't like it just extended. It was like, night number 1, night number 2,
Sure.
And it was just, it was interesting. I liked that. And it made it much more, it was fun. It was just a fun thing. And now I feel like everything is just so readily available, like
too
everyone's
readily available for my taste.
I'm going to download 70 episodes tonight, instead of being like, oh, we have to wait till next week.
Absolutely. And if you want a really good miniseries, something I didn't add in my previous statement as well, sometimes the miniseries, or more oftentimes I should add, was actually a perfect breeding ground to be able to dramatize historical events. I recently visited the miniseries Holocaust. Terrifying. Ooh. Terrifying series. That one from 78 with James Earl Jones, Rosemary Harris, Meryl Streep, and Michael Moriarty. Oof. Not an easy watch. And then to make matters worse, what did we watch right after finishing Holocaust? Nuremberg with Alec Baldwin. And
Nuremberg. I was going to say that, or Andromeda Strain.
I've never seen Andromeda Strain. What is it about?
Oh, it's a very, virusy.
I thought it had to do as well with Second World War, because I'm
just very upsetting. I'm talking about just very upsetting miniseries that came out. Andromeda Strain, as well as The Day After Tomorrow. Those were the ones that came out where you're just like, oh my God, like people.
Well, what about The Chaos Factor with Stephen Dorff and Sophia Myles?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's taking me back. Jeez. But
about the origins of the Ebola virus.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. I love Contagion. I
couldn't get into that.
Oh, I absolutely
switched off
loved
after
it.
15 minutes.
Wait, hold on. Hang on. Let me make sure it's the right one, because I'm just making sure.
Contagion is the one with Jude Law and Lawrence Fishburne, directed by Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah, no, that's the one. No, and I love it. And we watched it during the pandemic because I think I had seen it in the theater. Right. I think I had seen it in the theater. But then when we all went into lockdown and we were stuck at home, I was like, let's watch Contagion. And we started watching it, and it was really like, oh, because Soderbergh is an acquired taste. Let's be honest. Most people want to sit through 3.5 hours of drug stuff to get through traffic, right?
And I'm sorry to say, he can't direct action movies. I mean, I expected so much from Haywire with Gina Carano. But he made it look like a bloody soap opera.
Yeah, Soderbergh he's more a talkie, so to speak. He's more about the sex, lies, and videotape. He's very much a dialogue guy.
Did he do Sex, Lies, and Videotape?
Oh yeah, that's Soderbergh's first movie.
You kidding?
No, that's his. That was his very first one.
An opinion from me to you before we go completely off topic. You know who mirrors his style in many ways? David Cronenberg.
Oh yeah, Cronenberg does. Yeah.
Because if you want a movie that's worse than Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and this is actually a movie that I enjoyed, and you wouldn't see me. You darn tootin'. Yeah. I love that movie.
Right.
I love that movie.
But yeah, it's very. But that's the thing, is like it's Soderbergh is like, hey, let's get inside people's brains, and then Cronenberg's like, but we can. Cronenberg's like, let's get inside people's bodies.
And he makes the movies with an easy-to-look feel. That's what drew me to Crash.
Yeah.
I read about it a couple of years prior, and I never in my life thought that I would get the opportunity to see it. And I was at an antiques bazaar where I would normally buy my LPs, and there was a movie I desperately wanted to buy called Playing God with David Duchovny of X-Files.
Oh, yes, David Duchovny. Yes, huge fan.
And it was a 3-in-1 box set with Crash, Playing God, and then a movie that Malcolm McDowell made, which I've never watched, called The Butler or The Barber or something like that. I can't remember the title. It's The Funeral, Abel Ferrara, with Christopher Walken and Chris Penn.
Ah, okay.
And when I saw Crash, I thought, okay, let's give this a try. And 1 minute became 2, 2 minutes became 3, 3 became 35. And I thoroughly enjoyed that movie, I must say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you take a movie like Rabid, which really is Contagion, it's just Contagion with a little bit of sleaze. I mean,
Six cells.
You can't put Marilyn Chambers in a movie and just be like, oh, you know. This is fine. This is fine. So it's like it is. It's Contagion with sleaze. But it has this very beautiful look to it, you know, and it makes it really easy to watch it. It's not an uncomfortable watch at all.
And something I want to add as well with what we were talking about earlier with certain people looking at things like a B movie and whatnot. An opinion I want to share, and then you, with your knowledge on the genre, can either rectify me or add on. I recently had begun watching a lot of films that came out of the stable of EFO, who did the last number of Bruce Willis films up until the time of his retirement.
Okay.
And plus also did the 2 sequels to Escape Plan, starring Sylvester Stallone. And I have to tell you, they're even a lot more better than what some other A movies are of the 2 aforementioned actors. Great camera work. Dialogue might not have been completely 100%. Great sound mixing. And I think that will be the new in for new talent to make their mark.
Is action films or action B action?
B action, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, Tubi. Yeah, Tubi has kind of it's the changing of the guards, you know, and Tubi has sort of ushered in this new generation of filmmakers that are making horror films again, and you know, for just nothing, you know, and some of them are very entertaining. I mean,
they are.
You know, I'm like I was telling my boyfriend the other day, I was like, I don't like things that are shot on digital.
I'm also a 35-year-old person.
I like and I said, and because of this, when I see that something is shot on digital, I shut down and immediately not like the movie. I said, so for me to like 2 digital movies in a row last night is a big deal, because normally I'm a snob when it comes to the cinematography stuff. I'm just like, I hate this, you know.
As am I, and I've worked behind the lens, so I can judge.
I know. I'm like, I can see it. I can see it. I can see the digital. I hate it. You know. Or that the effects are done by CGI. That would be the other.
Of course.
Aaron shut down.
And that's a dead
moment.
giveaway.
Oh,
that's a dead giveaway.
I hate it.
And I have to agree with you on the cinematography. Sorry, I want to shoehorn this in here, because even when I worked on digital camera, I was trained to not let the camera call attention to itself. Meaning that if you are going to use elaborate camera tricks, you have to pre-plan it very carefully in the storyboard before you execute it, because otherwise you're wasting time and you're wasting money, and you have the threat of actually taking that budget way overblow. Where my attitude when I was behind the camera as a producer was, let's get that same type of effect, which is first class, but let's save money. But try and telling that to personnel and the like. And they always
forget
have
it.
fucking words to tell you back. Sorry.
I mean, it's true though. It's so hard to, because I have people ask me, they're like, who's your web host for your show? And I'm like, rss.com. And they're like, oh, you don't have a podcast, like a host website or whatever. And I was like, am I supposed to? I don't, like I said, I'm still learning, especially now I'm learning the advertising element of it. I don't know jack shit about. Somebody told me to check my stats the other day and I checked them and I was very pleasantly surprised. But we don't do this to make money. Like,
of course,
we are very much, this is a creative endeavor. I get to hang out with my dear, amazing, wonderful friend Hillary on a king size bed with one mic, and we just share it back and forth. And then I edit it, and it's like, that's it. Like, I don't have any lofty goal of, like, we're gonna get discovered and someone's gonna give us thousands of dollars to do this show. And it's like, no. I mean, we've had an offer. We had an offer to be like a new, like a startup company's flagship, podcast, but it would also require us to turn over the rights of it. And I just,
and then they would have to tell you how to produce, what content you're supposed to put on.
I know. And I'm 43, which means I don't look at dollar signs anymore. Like, I don't look at money and go, oh my God, of course you can take my baby. Here, take my baby. Just do whatever you want with my baby.
I hear what you were saying. I thought you were underpricing yourself there. I would have thought,
no.
Not seeing dollar signs?
No, but like, I look at it like, no, this is my art. Like, you can't take my art.
Of course.
Like, I get my control and this is mine. I don't want anyone else to have it. We're lucky in that, thank God for all of the platforms that podcasting allows, because
absolutely,
we can touch hundreds of people. It's nice to be able to be essentially what we say is like, we're small fish in a big pond.
Sure. And thankfully that, rather than a square peg in a round hole. As we start to wind down, Erin, what is your vision? Let's say roughly about 2-3 years down the line with Manic Movie Monday Podcast. Where do you see it going? In what direction?
I see people wearing T-shirts that say Manic Movie Monday. And I see a lot more cast reunions. I just did a cast reunion for Out of the Dark, which was
nice,
amazing. I had 7 people on there. I know. Trust me, talk about lofty goals, right? And I did it, and it was so successful, and I felt so good about myself after I pulled it off, because it's really hard. And the day up until the moment we recorded, I didn't think anyone was going to show up. I didn't, because Hollywood people don't RSVP to shit.
Well,
they don't. I mean, you send them
goodness.
messages and you're like, hey, can't wait to see you guys tonight. Smiley face emoji. And nobody responds. And then I'm sitting there in a black and red dress on camera, sweating my tits off because it's Florida and it's hot. And I'm like, oh my God. Right? And I'm like, I really hope they show up, And then all of a sudden the Zoom starts going bink, 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 and they're all showing up 5 minutes till. They're all like immediately showing up, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's really fucking happening, right? And I mean, I'm sitting there with my little note cards that I've been working on for weeks, and it ended up being just effortless and seamless. And I turned the editing over to Ron, like I had edited it for content, and then I handed it over to him. I said, make this sound pretty. And he was like, okay. And he's like, you really didn't need that much done to it, but here, And so he's come back in more of a producer, role. And so he's been, like I said, I don't know what I'd do without Ron. Like, we leaned on each other for so long, and he really, we always say he's the Buckingham to our Knicks. Like me and Hillary are just two Stevie Nickses, right? We're just like, let's write poetry about witches. Whee! And then Ron comes in and goes, okay, let's make this like make sense, right? Like let's make this appropriate for people to listen to. Let's make this sound nice. Let's make this coherent. And he does a damn good job. And by the way, ladies, he is single. So I'm just getting it out there. Anyway.
If you ever need a reference, call Erin. That's Erin, right. I didn't have the opportunity to say this, but I understand Manic Movie Monday Podcast has now done an anniversary episode.
Yes, we have actually airing tomorrow, Monday the 10th, because I'm not really sure when this will drop, but on Monday, July the 10th, we have a Q&A episode, which will feature Hillary and I answering fan questions. And it was really cool because we came with our own questions too. So like she had questions and I had questions and we didn't know what our questions were going to be. So that was really wonderful. And we read some reviews and then we gave shout outs to other podcasts that had been so instrumental in helping us get our feet wet too. So it's fucking awesome in my opinion. And yes, it will air tomorrow. So it'll be dropping on Spotify and iTunes and Amazon Music and wherever you find your podcasts.
And please do yourself a favor, check it out, Manic Movie Monday Podcast. I can highly recommend it, not just because I know Erin and because I've been on the show. It's really every geek, nerd, aficionado's wet dream.
True.
Even if I have to say so myself, Erin is an outstanding orator. I have said to her in private conversation that she's actually Mr. Calling. She's a fantastic orator and host, and I would highly, highly recommend, and I'd like to request our audience to visit Manic Movie Monday Podcast. Wet your teeth on some of the episodes. They are marked according to the title of a given movie. You are getting your money's worth and then some. Leonard Maltin, who? Cue Erin Dawn. And let this be a firm reminder to those who are currently in the grips of mental health stigma and plus also in mood disorder. You have seen and or heard a walking, talking example of someone who's in the same shoes as you are and who has made her previous weakness into her superpower, and she's making money off of it, treasure troves of it. Don't let that cute face convince you otherwise.
No, I'm kidding. No. I wish. I really do. I wish. It would be great if that was the thing. But like I don't know. I've looked into doing like voiceover work and stuff, but I have absolutely no idea how to get started with something like that. Although everyone's telling me they're like, you got to take classes, and I was like, yep, and I'm done.
You don't need to. You don't need to. If you can read a storybook convincingly, you can do voiceover work. Trust me, I've been in the business now for more than 6 years and I've never taken one voiceover acting class, and I'm doing voiceover work for anime. So,
yeah. I mean, and that's the thing.
But there's a will, there's a way.
It would be so nice to make money at that. And I know that I'm not meant for cubicle life, right? Like I've been in cubicle life for a while and it's one of my favorite Smith songs, which is Frankly, Mr. Shankly. It's Frankly, Mr. Shankly, this position I've held, it pays my way and it corrodes my soul.
But Erin, from all of us here at APX, congratulations on the Manic Movie Monday Podcast. And to you and Hillary, many more successful streaming episodes and a lot more mileage to the both of you. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. And I want to remind you that always through initiatives like this, through initiatives like Manic Movie Monday Podcast, and through initiatives like Erin, you remain an unbreakable mind, an unstoppable force, an untamed spirit, and above all else, an army of one, an apex predator. God bless everyone. We'll see you next time.